drives me crazy. All of my hockey lifetime getting into coaching, and that is starting goalies and backup goalies and the ages at which goalies are become backup. In my mind, that that is the demise of building a team, and it's the easiest way to destroy self-esteem with a person. And I'm curious about both your thoughts, Kim, as a person in leading in an organization at all age levels. Sammy, having grown up and witnessed it, and understanding it because you lived it. Can you comment on?
Well, Kim can go first, maybe what she thinks about when she's as the head coach and now running an organization.
She's still there?
Sorry, I was stepped out for a second. What's the
So the question was, as a head coach or as running an organization, are you cognizant of starting goalies and non-starters, or what we would say backups before? Do you allow that within your organization? And when do you start to kind of go into that direction, or do you ever? Are you always rotating?
For me as a coach, so I mostly coach midget and junior, and I never told anyone they were going to be the starter, the non-starter like that going into it. And for the most part, we would rotate all season long, and with the exception of maybe tournaments, because sometimes we have 5 games, it kind of gets uneven. So if someone's always the first goalie and she's getting 3 games, the other one's getting 2, or if they had a college scout coming to look at them, and sometimes we'd alter the starts like for those types of situations. And they were usually pretty good, and their parents about counting the number of games. I only had 1 year that I had a player who just really, really struggled, and we tried to get it. We got her in quite a bit, actually. To the detriment of the team. I think she had a 6 goals against average in junior, she was my midget goalie the year before, and she was fantastic. So something happened, but I picked her, so I played her, and it ended up as we got into the playoff hunt, she actually ended up getting a lot of the better teams because we didn't have a chance. And so it wasn't that, sometimes we threw her to the wolves, but I'm proud of that, having done that, because many of my players and even the parents are like, what are you doing? I didn't play her as, like, the other goalie got more, but it would have been very easy for me to not start the player. And I just thought, it's junior hockey, but it's minor hockey. And she was actually the first player I ever didn't invite back to the team the following year, which again was very hard for me to do, but it was clear that she just wasn't up to that level. And that struggle was all season long. And so we don't have a mandate like at the organization level. Typically at U9 and U11, we only have 1 goalie per team because we have so many teams. So there isn't a second goalie. And sometimes even at U13, we've only got 1. And I'm curious if there's any sort of recommendations from Hockey Canada. Like, I wouldn't see why you would need more than 1 goalie until U13, and maybe a kid who can do it. But to your point about having a goalie sitting on the bench, again, that's just our numbers. We don't have enough goalies.
Kim, yeah. We are Hockey Canada. In other words, what we're talking about and what should be done or could be done is evolving. And the dilemma of how it's dealt with is a topic that needs to be discussed and openly addressed so that advice can be given. And I have my thoughts, but Sammy, I'm more curious about your thoughts and the female.
I liked Kim's, you as a head coach, even at the highest level in junior hockey, you said, you picked her. And so it's your job to develop her. That's your responsibility as a person. And you did that. So I love that. I would I, in fact, have never in my entirety of my career played on a team where I didn't rotate. So, yeah, I was always jealous of the other teams and I would see the Montreal teams, they only played one goalie. They had very strong goalies, but they only played one goalie, and we always rotated. And I would even say, yeah, the number of games played was fairly even throughout my career on both sides, whether I was the stronger goalie or the weaker goalie. And then with the national team, even then, I feel like we rotated all the way up until the chosen final game. And the final game was always chosen. It could not be your turn or whatever. But that person then deemed to be the starting goaltender for Canada. So if you're chosen for that final game, but throughout the year, I feel like the coaches did a good job of rotating. And I asked actually Brad Kirkwood about why they don't have 4 goalies now at camp, which is what we always had in centralization. And he said to get the goalies in more games. And so I asked specifically about Kristen Campbell because she didn't see any games. And he said they had a philosophy for the players and for the goalies that they needed to do what they needed to do in that game to win that game, every single game. So I found that interesting. It's the first time that ever in centralization, it hasn't been just a 3 goalie system of rotation and then you pick the best at the end, or you pick the best prior to the Olympics and you get told if you're 1, 2, or 3. But the Olympics that I attended, when I was the 3rd goalie, I was told I was the 3rd goalie. I knew I wasn't playing. But in Salt Lake City, we were not told really until right before the game who was playing and who was backing up. And that was the same at the World Championships, 99, 2000, 2001. So, of course, tons of disappointment for the goalie not playing. But you always had hope. And I think that is a precursor to participation and, feeling like you belong, is that hope that you can contribute and be a part of it. And up until the national team levels, and even at the national team levels, we're essentially developing it's youth sport, and why are we doing it, and continuously going back to what is the best for the individual, what is the best for the team. Sometimes they're not convergent, but how can we really make this a great experience? So even something simple like, Wally, you talking to your non-starter during the game and asking them about the game, things like that can allow you to feel more a part of the team. And if you do have 2 goalies, allowing those 2 goalies to get to know each other and work together and not pitting them against each other, I think is also very key. You're not fighting for the same net. If you're rotating, you're supporting the other person. You want to win those games so your team can get to the playoffs and go further. But playing under Ken Dufton, we rotated, and if it happened to be your turn to play in a provincial final or a national final, that was your turn. And if it wasn't your turn, it just wasn't your turn to play. So we always back counted. We'd come September, you knew exactly the games you were playing right through to the final. So yeah, I think, Wally, like you, I would think that we on this call would all want the best for all the individuals playing, but that we know that that's not the case throughout all of Hockey Canada, and certain coaches will coach to win, and some of those goalies will not have a great experience through minor hockey and might not continue to play.
Yeah, I would say, Sammy, from my experience in coaching, I think it's still really rare in the women's game that there's a starter and non-starter.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, I've very rarely seen it. You might see, it's the championship game of the tournament, so I'm going to play Sally, or that sort of weighting of it. But I would say it's extremely rare, and of the 30 competitive coaches I've worked with year after year, I don't think any of those teams have ever gotten into that type of scenario. But I know on the men's side, it's all the time. I'll have parents tell me, "Oh, my son's the backup goalie on such and such a team," and I'm like, "Always? He's all? What if he gets?"
Yeah. What kind of experience would that be? Yeah.
Well, and I'll relay one more story and then I got to jump off. But one year I had, a goalie who was sort of, number 1 and 2 in the league. in terms of numbers. And she just graduated from Boston University. She's been involved with Hockey Canada stuff. And she was very far ahead of the other goalie to start the season, who was a bit of an underdog and all that sort of thing. And we rotated, and it was really interesting that this sort of quiet, introverted other goalie, kind of without saying anything, without anything be said, became, not quite as good, but just as reliable as the other goalie. And she ended up playing at University of Waterloo and became quite, because she may have felt that, and the team may have seen that we had this great goalie, but it was never said. It was never, Kate's going to do this, and you're going to, I think it's just about how you treat people. And I see that with players all the time, right? When you idolize a particular player, or that's our starting line, or that's our number one line, just that language can be so detrimental in their development. And, I remember one year, I started the same line every game, and they never scored. And people one of the parents asked me, why you starting the third line? So why are they the third line? They're starting the game, aren't they the first line? It's because they didn't put all the points on the board, they're not as valuable, right? This goalie didn't win as many games, therefore, she's not as valuable. So I think coaches need to be really cognizant and understand that, a goalie, just like any other player on your team, they could be the 9th forward you pick, and they end up being the best one by the end of the year. But anyways, I got to jump off. I enjoyed Goalie World, Sammy. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me talk about Goalie World for a little bit. I could talk all day about Goalie World.
Well, I was texting with one of my former goalies during the game last night, so I try to keep those relationships strong. Although when it comes to goalie swag and the pads and the helmet, I have no idea. Wally, I hope I see you this week.
Yeah, Sunday morning looks best for me.
Okay, sounds good. Well,
So
let's plan for that.
I'll send you a text when I finalize it with the people I answer to.
Hey, fair enough. And maybe if you want to come and watch any of the skills or anything, I know Dean will be there.
Yeah.
You can come watch me try to keep up with.
I just might pop in and surprise you in the meeting room like I did Sammy. Caught her off guard just by walking right in, and it was good to see her. And
it was perfect because you came at lunchtime, so we had lots of time.
Yeah.
All right, Wally, sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Sammy, on the goaltending situation, to me, it relates to starting lines. I mean, in minor hockey, I'm not sure how many teams start the same line every period, which is a statement of they're the best line.
Mm-hmm.
And at younger ages, at any age, I've always started a different line. Every age.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. Everybody gets that feeling of taking that opening faceoff.
Now, including a senior team as a playing coach, when we got to the Allen Cup final, that's the way I coach. That's the way we ran the lines, because the best team wins, not the best individual. And that's the philosophical thing that evolved through all of my experience in coaching. I believe at the U13 level, the score clock seems to play a big part in pressure for the coaches and parents, not the kids. And that's where they might begin creating a 1-2 arrangement late in the season, maybe in the playoffs, or that decision in the final game or the final provincial 2 out of 3 series. And I have seen coaches lose their jobs when they've done that. And I've seen coaches lose their jobs when they haven't. So I think the messaging here, coming from the top down, inside out, bottom up, is we're in the business of growing people and developing people. And I will always prophesize for the good of the game and the good of what the game can do to the people. So not the outcome. And having that philosophy has boded well for me all of my life in all of the sports I coached. with that philosophy, and it hasn't been X's and O's. I think the players felt appreciated and they performed at their capacity, not above their capacity, at their capacity. And we have no idea of their potential, but we can sure shut it down quickly. And I think the idea of transmitting belief is what we're trying to do as coaches. And, I really want to thank you for coming on today, Sammy. And I don't know, I could do a lot of editing here and breaking it up into tidbits, and I will. But we do have to have a follow-up session. And I don't know if you know anybody that you could bring in from the Hockey Canada group, like a Kirkwood, and you could maybe moderate the session to cover the gamut of all levels, or maybe we just focus on the elite level at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm curious about the girls who come to the national team. How are they coached by their goalie coaches, whichever team they play on? And how are they managed by their head coaches in terms of playing or not playing? And usually they're all invited because they're the number one goalies, and now they come into a number two role. So that's another topic entirely. But I take it to the first line, second line's the same thing as a starting goalie and a backup goalie. The words don't build a team.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to bring in somebody else as well. And I'm just cognizant of them all now starting hockey school season.
Yeah.
So might be something for September.
Good. That's good.
Simply because Thursdays this is when most goalie coaches make most of their money.
Okay. All right. Well,